Well, Bill Decker, thank you for being here today.
Oh, I appreciate it. Well, I just got finished watching some Get Smart reruns, so I had some time.
I've had fun getting to know you over the last couple of months. You spoke to our chief executive group last month. It was phenomenal. And the reason why it was so good, Bill, is because you gave so much information that was actionable. And so, what I noticed is people taking notes. And
Mhm.
you got us to think about things differently as well, to think about ourselves differently, and to have a different point of view. So, anyway, for that
Well,
reason, I've asked you to join me today.
one guy wasn't really taking notes. I think he was doing a crossword puzzle, but I'm not quite sure because he kept saying, "What's a six-letter word for boring or something?" Yeah, something like that.
So, here's what I've learned so far about Bill Decker. You're a multilingual world citizen, but most importantly, you're fascinated with people. That's
Yes.
kind of your primary focus. You're a student of people, but now you've focused it in the business world during the course of your career through sales and marketing.
Mhm.
And you're also a student of technology, and you've been working in the area of blockchain recently. So one of the people you've done work for said it this way. He said, Bill is different. It's that simple. I've
Mhm.
never met a marketing professional who not only creates strategy, but also implements at the highest standards,
Hmm.
unquote. And so that
Not
what
my mother, by the way. Did my mom do that one?
I think it was your mom.
Okay.
And the focus, of course, is on execution. I
Yes.
think that's critically important because growth is virtually everything. If we cannot grow, we don't have a business, and
Exactly.
it's in every aspect of our lives. So that's how I wanted to start this today. And if you'd be so kind as to tell us, where you came from and how you got here, that would be a great way, I think, for you to start.
Sure. I mean, one of the things I wanted to mention when you talk about people, business is still people. And the role of technology to replace people is not the answer. And in my work in technology, I see an awful lot of tech built so that they don't have to interact with people, right? We're going to use email and marketing, and we're not going to pick up the phone. We're not going to press the flesh. You're not going to get face to face. We're going to make an offering on the internet and hope that a whole bunch of people sign up. And that does work to some extent. But for larger deals, something besides a Netflix subscription, for example,
Yeah.
business people. So where did I come from? I grew up in New York City, lived all over the world, Asia 9 years, Europe 7 years, decided to uh, move back to the USA and decided this was the place to hang my hat here in Denver, Colorado. I'm kind of a grown up in marketing and sales,
Mhm.
trained as a New York City salesman. So I always say that because we talk to 600, 400, 300 people a day, or we at least reach out to that many.
Right.
Here in Denver, they might reach out to that many in a month.
Yeah. But Bill, go back for a minute. How did you end up going to school in Europe, and how did this desire for international travel for you begin?
Well, it started weirdly with the martial arts.
Oh,
So I had studied martial arts for years,
yeah.
and I was fighting in tournaments, and I was fighting in tournaments, on a very high level, and I wasn't winning. And I had a Korean instructor, and he said, "You're done with your body. You're 188 pounds of muscle. Uh, you're not going to win unless you work on your mind."
Mm,
And his way of being a master, not just in the martial arts, but a person you could call on generally in life. And I always love to tell the story that when my instructor grew up as a little boy in Korea, he was in death tournaments and he had actually had to kill.
wow.
And these are illegal now, and they were probably illegal back then. And I said to him, "What if you die? What if you didn't live?" He said, "I would rather die than face my family." Every Asian I've explained this story to understands that, but
Mm,
very few Western people really, what are you, nuts?
right.
Take up surfing, right? why don't you ride a bicycle instead of this? So it was that way of thinking that got me very interested. When I decided to go overseas and live overseas, I was just out of college for about a year. I was in sales in New York. And I said, if I don't go see the world now, I never will. So I took a backpack and a mandolin and $1,000 and a one-way ticket, and I went to live in Asia. And I came back about 16 years later, after living in Asia for 9 years, in Europe for 7 years, in the Middle East for a year and a half. And my former career was taking companies into foreign markets. So that's what I would do. So I'd sit down with a US company or a Dutch company, and they want to be in, I don't know, Korea or China or Thailand, and I would facilitate that process. We call it market entry. It's a really nice MBA term for sales.
Well, when did you first discover this proclivity for language?
Probably just growing up in New York, because you hear all the languages.
Mm-hmm.
Here I live in Denver, and Denver is just not international.
Right.
But it's very common to jump into a taxi and the cab driver's Pakistani, and the guy who's selling you your newspaper is Chinese, and someone who might be cleaning, might be from South Korea, and your landlord might be Japanese. And so you get that, and you start to go after the languages,
Right.
because it's one of the keys to culture.
Right.
There are words. I love to tell this story. In Yiddish, there is a word that does not exist in any other language. And imagine the relationship between your wife's parents and your parents. There is no word for that. You might say in-laws, but they're not each other's in-laws.
Mm-hmm.
Her parents are your in-laws and your parents are her in-laws. But the relationship between the two of them is machatenista or machatunum, which I think I spit all over my lens. I may have to clean it. So after you start to pick up on that, you start to look for other words.
Right.
And where the word kinky, which we all know what that means, that's a Japanese word. It means the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And we took them.
Yeah. So what were your first jobs like?
Oh, well, growing up in New York, I mean, first thing I probably did was I was a street magician.
Really?
And no inventory. It goes where you go. I need a few bucks, and it would be Christmas, and I'd be right in front of the New York City Public Library on 42nd and 5th.
Yeah.
And I just doing magic tricks, and strangers would throw quarters into my hat. Occasional dollar, once in a while, a rare $5 bill.
Yeah.
I'd get a basket full of them. I'd go over to the bank, pour it into the machine. And if I ever needed a few bucks, I did it. I drove a cab one summer. And if you ever want to think about getting your kid to go to college, let them drive a taxi in New York. That'll send you right to college. And then I had the usual jobs kids have, restaurant jobs, delivery jobs, things like that. But the street magician, that was everything, because that's sales. I've got to entertain you long enough for you to part with some money.
And your first sales job, you said earlier, was in New York. Well,
In New York,
what did you do there?
I sold office machines that nobody wants. I sold binding equipment. This thing on your desk and you bind a paper, or a laminating machine. I don't know how much laminating anyone needs doing.
Right.
But and it was cold calling. I'm old, so this is pre-internet.
Yeah.
We did not have sales development representation. We had no leads, no advertising.
Wow.
They would give us these things called Dunn's Market Identifiers, which are created by Dun & Bradstreet, but are completely inaccurate. So it was banging on doors in Manhattan, banging on office doors. Some of the most prestigious buildings in Manhattan, Rockefeller Center, World Trade Center, Empire State Building, Chrysler Building, I've been thrown out of. I've been on the service elevator on those buildings, actually being escorted out by security.
But you were successful, and you had to find a needle in a haystack. How did you do it?
Perseverance. You really have to. It's just a lot of hard work. They say sales is a numbers game, and it's true.
Yeah.
It's a contact sport. The more contacts you make, the better your sport is.
Right.
But I also tried to separate myself from the slimy sales guy, because
Hmm.
sales is such a nasty connotation.
Right.
We don't call it sales, John. We call it business development.
Hmm.
In sales, no, I'm in relationship development. Or when people pitch me on LinkedIn, the very first thing they do is tell me they don't want to sell me anything.
Hmm.
And I know that I'm eye candy and they probably just want to be in touch with me. But it's gotten such a bad reputation.
Hmm.
And my mentor said, I've never sold anything. I helped a lot of people buy though.
Hmm.
And salespeople have to position themselves as problem solvers.
Hmm.
I'm here to help, is how I talk. And what's your problem, John? Oh, you're trying to do something. What are you trying to do? The mistake made in sales is 90% of the sales pitch seems to be presenting.
Hmm.
And it shouldn't be. It should be diagnosing.
Hmm.
So if I walk into your office, John, and I finally do get a meeting, which is not an easy thing to do anyway,
Hmm.
and I can't find your problem, I won't be able to sell you anything. No problem, no sale.
Hmm.
But if I at least dig for your problem, and there is no problem,
Hmm.
and I've been in that situation, I've made a friend,
Right.
because I have not pushed a solution down your throat and said, binding equipment. Well, Bill, we just don't use any paper. We don't do any binding. Everything's PDF and email. I can't help you.
Right.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
But now you're my friend.
Right.
Now you've realized this guy is not slimy.
Hmm.
And then what other problem do you have? I don't know. We can't find a good secretary. Oh, I know someone who might help.
Hmm.
So it's bringing that problem solving piece. And you know this, you've been in sales for years.
Hmm. Yep. So was your next job in Europe or Asia?
Asia.
Oh.
So I went to Asia. I was living in Taiwan at the time.
Hmm.
Like all foreigners, I got this job teaching English as a reference language. So these people already spoke some English.
Hmm.
And I said to my class, and Chinese help you. And they actually have respect for teachers.
Hmm.
The most famous teacher in the world was a man named Confucius. Confucius's birthday is Teacher's Day.
Hmm.
So I turned to my class and I said, guys, I'm doing this, but I'm not really a teacher. I'm a sales guy. And one of my students said, oh, my father owns a trading company, an import-export company.
Wow.
Let me introduce you. And
Hmm.
then I got into trade. I got into import-export. And the fact that I was a New Yorker and the buyers were New Yorkers
Oh yeah.
changed that game a bit.
Oh yeah.
I spoke New York.
Yes.
I understood what they were doing. I didn't say the things that all the other Chinese salesmen next to me were saying. We
Hmm.
have the best price, we have the best quality. Well, that's an impossibility. You either have one or the other.
Hmm.
But again, it goes back to the problem solving.
Hmm.
What do you get? What are you trying to get from this island? Oh, we have brass, but we don't want brass. What do you need? Oh, you need onyx. Let me help you.
Hmm.
Let me solve your problem. And that was able to take me around Asia, because you can trade from anywhere.
Hmm. Yeah. How long did you do that?
I did that a couple of years, and then I opted to get into market entry. I said the money and the interest here is helping these companies get into these Asian countries.
Hmm.
My first client was Harcourt Brace Jovanovich. They were the largest trade magazine publisher in the world.
Hmm.
Magazines that no one read, how to run a veterinary practice, how to run a pet store. And I helped them bring their magazine division into Asia.
Hmm.
They were coming over and they were kind of opening their briefcase and trying to sell. And the difference between Asians and Americans is they are very, very relationship oriented, and we are very task oriented. And I know all the Americans out there are listening. Well, we're relationship oriented. Yes, but the second piece on that continuum is time.
Hmm.
You will claim to have a relationship after a single round of golf,
Hmm.
opposed to after a few years,
Right.
right? And so creating those relationships and spending that time, which is the biggest cultural difference, not the language, but our perception of time.
Hmm.
We have words in the English language to express time that no other language has. Spend time, waste time, overtime. Thank you for your time. A Teamster gets time and a half, not money and a half, right? No other culture expresses time that way.
Mm-hmm.
We look at it as time is money. Time is bought and sold.
Mm-hmm.
I have no time.
Mm-hmm.
So the rest of the world doesn't look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So in respecting that, you can actually do business if you understand at least what questions to ask. I've been dealing with China since the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
and I am not an expert. The Chinese aren't experts.
Mm-hmm.
The culture is deliberately confusing.
Mm-hmm.
But can I be rewarded for my effort? Can I be rewarded for knowing what questions to ask? This is how we do it. How do you do it?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we see a product and we decide to buy it. We might try it in a few stores. How do you do it?
Mm-hmm.
That sensitivity puts you above, the average white guy trying to do business there.
Mm-hmm. So was this then the transition from Asia to Europe that you were continuing to work for an Asian company, or did you shift?
I was working for American companies, helping them get into Asia.
Oh, okay.
And then I decided I wanted a vacation
Mm-hmm.
and I really want to take some time off.
Mm-hmm.
Well, time off to me was going back to school.
Yeah.
So I moved to the Netherlands and did an MBA in Europe's best program. And because I was in international business, who were the most international people in the world? And pound for pound, they're the Dutch.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can turn to you and say, I speak 4 languages, and some of you Americans watching this might be very impressed.
Mm-hmm.
But the head waiter at the Hyatt in Amsterdam speaks 5. Yeah.
Right. Yes. Right.
I mean, I used to buy herring on a roll with onions on it. Raw herring, they love that. It's acquired taste for those of you in TV land. The guy spoke 3 languages.
Mm-hmm.
He
Right.
smells like fish.
Right.
He's putting onions on a herring roll,
Yeah.
and his English is college level US.
Yeah.
So the language is really not that impressive.
Right.
To monolingual Americans, it is. So I did an MBA at the Netherlands, and just as I was doing that MBA, this thing called Eastern Europe happened, where suddenly these countries that we were terrified of were open for business. Warsaw, Moscow, Poland, Slovakia, Slovenia,
Right.
Romania, Hungary. We knew nothing about these places.
Mm-hmm.
The Iron Curtain, we got no information in, we got very little information out. Anybody in the States from those countries wouldn't talk about them.
Mm-hmm.
You sit down with a Romanian immigrant in the States and say, what's Romania like? He goes, I had to get out of there. It's terrible. I don't want to talk about it.
Right.
And now they're open.
Mm-hmm.
I had a Polish grandfather, and when I told him I was going over to Poland, he stopped talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I got on a boat at 23, so you'd never have to be there. And I cannot believe in my 80s that it has actually changed.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to be part of that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And that started to take me everywhere. We had a company called Connect, and we were partnering companies all over the world. We had offices all over the world. I still had my Asian contacts.
Was that a company you created then,
Yes,
Bill?
I founded that.
Mm-hmm.
And we were pioneers in partnering.
Really?
So that was a very different concept. You hear it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a company that makes telephone services,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to be in, say, Poland, which is
Mm-hmm.
at that time 39 million people,
Mm-hmm.
and in the center of Europe,
Mm-hmm.
and very American affinity because 30 million of us have some Polish blood.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest Polish city in the world is Warsaw, the second is Chicago. So we worked with one of the telcos to get them into Poland. Now, what the telcos would do is they'd find a telco,
Mm-hmm.
want to be your partner. Well, you make dial tones and we make dial tones.
Right.
If we use your dial tones, what are we going to do with all the people we have making dial tones?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you fire those people. Well, no, we're not firing those people. They're part of our community. I'm an employer in this town. Well, you'll make more money.
Right.
What do you mean? I've stolen more money than I can ever spend. I'm not worried about money. You're not getting me with that. So when we took one of the telcos into Poland, we found a chain of 5 banks, and we partnered with them.
Mm-hmm.
We went to these banks and said, we're going to wire you up, and we're going to wire you up with your clients because the phone system doesn't work. And we spread that way. Then the PTT, the Polish telecom, came to us
Mm-hmm.
and said, okay, your tech is better. How do we work together? Because we could lose clients over this.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to keep these people employed. So what are you doing And then you could create a joint venture. I love to tell the story of Sena. It means the scene in Slavic. A water company came to us and said, we want to export water into Central Europe because the water's not drinkable in a lot of these places. And that means putting water in a boat in California and shipping it all over. That didn't make any sense. Oh, why don't we take the water from Denmark? It's right across the North Sea. They've got some of the best water in the world, and put the water there. Oh, no one knows the name of the brand.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have to start with brand loyalty and creating an awareness. And how much money have you got? 50 million? How about we partner with the largest fashion magazine in the region called Sena, meaning the scene.
Mm-hmm.
Make them our partner, put the water in the bottles, advertise it in the magazine. Sena also own nightclubs. And let's not put it on the shelf as an alternative to club soda. Let's put it in the bars and the clubs as an alternative to vodka.
Mm-hmm.
Poland had some of the strictest drunk driving laws in the world. One sip and they could put you in jail.
Wow.
There was always a designated driver in a professional circle.
Yeah.
So, and think of Perrier. What did Perrier do when they came to the States? They didn't go on the shelf next to club soda. They were a club drink.
Mm-hmm.
Green bottle and the little opener and the lemon and the, right?
Yeah.
It's club soda.
Right.
It isn't even natural. It's made with a machine. They found benzene in it. But they push that panache.
Mm-hmm.
So these are the kinds of deals we did at Connect International.
Yeah. You've lived a very rich life. And even though you spent a couple of hours with us and you and I have spent a couple of months getting to know each other, you're telling me stories I hadn't heard before. And
Well, I just made them up. I mean, I hope, know.
So how long did you do that? How long were you in that business, and did you ultimately sell it?
So
Or
we did. We ultimately sold it to one of our clients,
mm-hmm.
which was a Swedish media conglomerate.
Mm-hmm.
They were a client of ours, and they bought us.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is my partners started to drop off. The partners that I had large family empires to go back to.
Mm-hmm.
So as the base of this was all relationships and connections, and as they started to fizzle away, we had to sell. And some of the guys wouldn't even do 1 year. They were saying, no, what's my share worth? I'll just put the money in because I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm running an enormous company in India. I don't have time for this.
Right.
My parents said, congratulations, you got your MBA with this guy, get some experience, and then come back here
Mm-hmm.
and act like a billionaire. Because you are one, that kind of thing.
Right.
So we sold that. And then shortly after, I decided to return to the States, and I came to happy Denver, Colorado, which is a good place to live.
Yes, it is.
It is, because I can live anywhere. And, the interesting thing about coming here, remember I told you earlier, I studied martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a tournament competitor.
Mm-hmm.
So I came here thinking I was an athlete. And I'm no athlete. I mean, these people run up a hill with a backpack on, or they'll ski all day and then go for a bike ride.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, wait, I'm an athlete. I fought. I have little medals. I have pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I went for a hike on one of my first dates with a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're driving into Brainerd Lake, and she said to the guy, I want something strenuous. I'm like, no, how tough could this be? Well, we're starting at 10,000 feet and then going up.
Yeah.
So there's no oxygen.
Right.
And I grew up on an island. I mean, I grew up where there was like humidity and air. And it was good New York air. You could see it. Yeah.
Well, then, what I've observed is many of your clients are overseas, and you spend an awful lot of time on an airplane right now, which you'd like to change.
Yes.
So, and you've been doing some technology work, especially in the area of blockchain. What's been going on there?
So what I do is I try to find where the next freight train is. Mm-hmm. So before I was in blockchain, I was in data analytics. Mm-hmm. And before I was in that, I was in 3D printing. Mm-hmm. So I got involved in 3D printing. Mm-hmm. Wasn't in its infancy. The tech had been around for about 25 years, but it hadn't been mass adopted.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw this train coming.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're in 3D printing, well, what do you want to do? You know, do you want to make printers? Do you want to make software? Do you want to sell filament, plastic filament? Do you want to do research? Right? Do you want to rent your 3D printer out to people who want to print on it? Those are
Right.
called service bureaus. We opted to go into the media business. So we became kind of the CNN of 3D printing
Mm-hmm.
and said, we're going to be media guys. We're going to tell the story. We're going to own the conversation.
Right.
And we did that through a series of media outlets, lots of websites, video channels, podcasts, and we started and founded the largest trade association in the space,
Mm-hmm.
which was a for-profit trade association. Most recently, I've been in blockchain about the last 7 years, which I believe is the absolute future. Every company you know will be a blockchain company.
Mm-hmm.
Mistake that's being made are people are confusing blockchain and crypto.
Right.
Crypto is an application. Think of crypto like Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon's not the internet, it sits on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
The internet can be used to buy stocks, mix cement, deliver babies, you know, put a nanny cam in your house, talk on the phone. We're talking on the internet right now. This has nothing to do with Amazon. And blockchain is that new underlying tech. And applications like crypto, but also things like inventory control, security, international payments is huge.
Right.
There's a little company you might have heard of called Visa. So if you go to London with your Visa card and you buy yourself a beer, that's going to be expressed in pounds.
Mm-hmm.
That has to be converted to dollars, sent back to Visa headquarters, where you are billed in US dollars.
Mm-hmm.
They have found that by putting this on the blockchain, that transaction can happen in about 20 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And because it happens in about 20 seconds, the currency risk they take, right? I mean, what's a pound worth today versus 20 minutes from now versus tomorrow?
Right.
Right? If they say a pound is $1.25, the chances are it'll still be $1.25 in 20 seconds, but maybe not in 3 days.
Right.
Now, you don't really care how this transaction happens. You just bought your beer in London and you're paying for it in dollars, and that's all under the hood. You don't know how that transaction is adjudicated, nor do you ever care.
Yeah.
This is not, it's none of our business. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how Amazon put the book in the box. I just know I went online, I got the book.
You know, you're reminding me that at the time of this recording, that one of the hot topics in business today is the IPO of Reddit.
Mhm.
Reddit is the seventh most trafficked site globally, so that's why the excitement. Because at the end of the day, oil doesn't run the economy anymore.
Mhm.
It's attention.
Mhm.
And this is a topic that I'm very interested in hearing from you about because we're in an attention-based economy today. What are your thoughts about that? How do we, as the owners of businesses, get the attention that drives the growth that we began our discussion with?
Well, first of all, you have to figure out some very basic things. So I ask executives all the time what the biggest market in the world is. And they say China.
Mm,
And the answer is Google.
yeah,
Google's a marketplace. It's not a search engine. It's a whole marketplace.
right,
If they're not selling toys, they're selling ideas. If they're not selling ideas, they're selling rankings and attention. And if you're going to go after attention, the answer to that is clearly content. You've got to say something people want to hear in a way they want to hear it.
right,
I mean, you can hear what I'm trying to do in this interview. I'm trying to be funny. I'm trying to be flippant. I'm trying to have a little excitement.
right,
If I sat there with a deadpan, well, and then we go to Google and we try to get ranking. I mean, people will tune out.
right,
Now, some people are not going to like my style
right,
because there's no universal win in marketing. If you say you've got the best car in the market, then I'm not interested if I want the cheapest.
mm-hmm,
Put a stake in the ground, and some people will go with you and some won't. Some
mm,
people are looking at this and they're going to go, I love this guy. He's fun. He's gorgeous. And some people are going to say, like, if I really want to see this, I'll just tune into Curb Your Enthusiasm and have a better time.
yeah,
So you have to put a stake in the ground. And then content, what is that? Educate and entertain.
Mm-hmm.
You have to entertain.
Mm.
The other thing is, you talk about attention. We live in what I call short attention span theater. You have to make your point very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many emails you get a day, John. Let's call it 150.
Mm-hmm.
And LinkedIn requests. Let's call that another few dozen.
Right.
And you got the radio on, right? And you got an app on your phone or your iPad, and the phone rings,
Right.
and you're watching TV, and you're seeing road signs when you drive, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a menu at the restaurant. There's such a fight for your eyes and ears.
Right.
Who's going to win? Someone who empathizes with you, someone who entertains you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone who understands what you're doing.
Right.
I mean, imagine the next time we're in a restaurant, there's a menu. And next to it, there's another menu saying, stop with the complicated menu. We'll just bring you what we want. Right? Give us $20. We'll bring you some lunch. Just check anything you won't eat, like, I don't know, mayonnaise or horseradish. And then we'll just bring it. And now right? Einstein wore the same suit every day. He didn't want any of his brain power wasted on picking clothes.
Right.
So the content has to be relevant to the audience, and it's not all one audience. I mean, you're an older guy with a huge career behind you.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to respond like a 19-year-old.
Right.
Saying, guess what? We're playing a puzzle. Punch the chicken in the eye and a beer paw is on his head, and you can win points to our video game. That's not going to hit you at all.
No.
You're going to be things like, fine wine, great vacation, right? Fountain of youth, comfortable clothes, but it has to be spoken to you in your language that you can relate to.
Right.
I noticed, John, and you're not doing it today, but I noticed you wear a suit a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't it be great if I had the most comfortable suit that felt like pajamas,
Mm-hmm.
and talk to you like you're in a suit, you're miserable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care if it's silk or Italian, you're miserable. We're all miserable in suits. That's why we're not wearing one now.
Mm-hmm.
If it was comfortable, we'd be putting it on.
Right. Yeah.
So it's got to be very, very segmented, very focused.
Well, that means you really need to understand who your customer is. Who do you serve?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk to companies and they say we have a website,
Mm-hmm.
I always say, well, who's the website for?
Mm-hmm.
They say our clients. Okay, which ones? Well, everybody. I'll say, okay, so that's my mom.
Right.
88-year-old mom. No, not her. Oh, okay, so it's not everybody. It's everybody except Bill's mom.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is it John's dog? No. So it's everybody except Bill's mom, and you have to get them to think that way.
Mm-hmm.
So they say, well, we have a website. I say, why don't you have 5 of them? And they take the poor man's way. We have different, menu pull downs,
Mm-hmm.
right? This one's for millennials, and this one's for old people, and this one's for women, and this one's for bald guys. And as opposed to dropping the $2,000 to make a new website positioned exactly at that audience,
Mm-hmm.
exactly at their hot buttons and what they need.
Mm-hmm. I'm trying to wrap my head around that because can you give me some examples of companies that do that? I don't know anyone who does it exactly that way.
No, but companies that have been segmenting forever. So in marketing, there are 2 schools.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Colgate school, where everything's named Colgate or Palmolive.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the Procter & Gamble school.
Mm-hmm.
The toothpaste is not called Procter & Gamble. It's called Crest.
Mm-hmm.
And the toilet paper is not called Procter & Gamble. It's called either Banner or Charmin.
Mm-hmm.
And the detergent is not called Procter & Gamble. It's called Tide.
Mm-hmm.
I think they got all as well. And the potato chips are Pringles. And they segment the brands at least by use of product.
Mm-hmm.
At least by use of product. But a company, Walmart. Now, Walmart is a gigantic discount store, but you're probably aware they own a lot of stores,
Mm-hmm.
right? They own, backpacking stores. I think they own a Sierra Trading Post. And these are positioned entirely at different audiences.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to a backpacking store, I'm really not interested in getting discounted chicken,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I want someone who knows what they're talking about. So you see it happening there as well. And you also see it happening with web companies that buy other web companies, right? They'll often keep the other web company's name and allow them to target that exact market.
Well, I can sure see it as we expand internationally, having a website for each country that in which you do business. I can see separate websites using the Procter and Gamble example that each product, each brand would have its own website. Um, but there are some businesses where I think that's challenging. Take a
Yeah.
law firm as an example. Could a law firm have multiple websites depending upon the type of law that is being practiced?
I would absolutely do it. Lawyers don't think that way.
Mm-hmm.
Lawyers name their websites after themselves,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? So if I called it John Finnegan, that only works if I'm looking for John Finnegan.
Mm-hmm.
And I may look for him after I've heard of him
Right.
or speak, but I'm not looking for you,
Right.
right? So what am I looking for? So if I'm looking for German contract law, I'd call my site that.
Mm-hmm.
And if I did, I don't know, Dutch import-export law, I'd call it that.
Mm-hmm.
There's no law saying that these law firms can't have all the sites they want. The laws are what's the name of the firm, and that's what you have to call it, named after the partners.
Mm-hmm.
You can't really call it Happy Law Firm. You have to call it, I don't know, whatever the names are. Same thing with accounting.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why an accounting firm can't have a firm, just tax accounting,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just M&A accounting. And they don't think that way.
Right.
And they go as far as even putting pictures of themselves up on their website.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that doesn't solve my problem. I'm negotiating with a German company. I need German contract law. I don't need a picture of some guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I always do this, and I love this exercise. These websites are like this, and they need to be like that, 180 degrees.
Right.
You're a sales guy, John. If you started coming to me and bragging about your company, I'd be uninterested.
Mm-hmm.
If you started figuring out what my problem was and what I'm looking for,
Mm-hmm.
that's otherwise you never would have closed the deal.
Right.
You could have maybe in the early days of IBM, right? When there were no computers and they were the computer company.
Mm-hmm.
But even then it got hard very quickly.
Can you give me some examples of clients without naming names, like by category that of some of the issues that they're dealing with and some of the mistakes that they're making that could help guide us?
In marketing,
Yeah,
the
well,
mistakes in
marketing.
marketing, sales.
Mhm.
Well, I do a lot with tech companies now. So my practice is really helping tech companies figure out how to market,
Mhm.
or helping companies that are non-tech figure out how to use the new tech.
Mhm.
Or there's this marketing 101. We're a tech company. We need sales. How do we do it?
Right.
The first mistake I see, and I'll stay on tech,
Mhm.
is tremendous amounts of money are spent to build the perfect box. And then they have to figure out how to sell it. And
Mm.
I get those calls every day.
Yeah.
Built it. I talked to one company, they spent $4 million building software. No one bought it. So now they're working on version 2. And when they came to me, they said, we're going to do version 2. I said, why don't you just hire some salespeople and
Right.
sell version 1? Oh, we're a product company. I said, great. Again, there's that flip. We got to change you from a product to a market company. That's easy. That's only 180 degrees.
Mhm.
Nothing could be farther from the truth.
Yeah.
Companies don't involve salespeople early enough. They don't involve marketing people early enough.
Mhm.
And when they bring on a salesperson, they kind of look at it as a skill set. And I look at sales as a mentality.
Mhm.
And that mentality is customer focused.
Mhm.
You're building a piece of tech. I would absolutely have sales in as soon as you decide what you're building to start testing the market
Right.
and having formal conversations and bringing that feedback back in from the marketplace.
Mhm.
Hey, John, what you're building, I've talked to 50 people. Everyone thinks you're nuts.
Mhm.
Or John, everyone wants it in blue.
Mhm.
John, if only you could use a fingerprint instead of having to log in.
Right.
or this privacy thing is just driving people crazy. Make that an easy thing to understand. This is what the market is telling me.
Mm-hmm.
We should be involved in the inception. So this is a real problem,
Mm-hmm.
because what if you're going to spend millions of dollars and people's careers building this box,
Mm-hmm.
people are going to get married to it.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than adapt to the market, they're going to hope the market adapts to them.
Mm-hmm.
I just talked to a tech CEO this morning, and he said, we thought if we built it, they would come.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody came.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, what about selling? What about marketing? My line is, when all else fails, it's marketing and sales. So I really would worry much less about how good that is. The guy who really cares about the tech differentiator is the guy who built it.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us don't need this. So not focusing on the client is a way of thinking. Websites. A website should answer 4 questions. For those of you in TV land, get your notebook, or just watch this again. Who's the client? What's her problem? What's our solution? And why is it better?
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many people get stuck at the who's the client. Well, we're talking universities. Well, they'll never write you a check.
Mm-hmm.
The client is your FAN, F-A-N, finance authority need. If they're not ever going to pay you, they're never going to be a client. But they know people. Oh, okay. But you're selling to someone who will never write you a check.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I'm very suspicious of channel marketing,
Mm-hmm.
which everyone uses, but you're selling through a channel that will never pay you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, why do it? Oh, we're too cheap and lazy to have a direct sales force.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to go to, I don't know, Ernst & Young. They have 1 million clients, and get them to sell our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that'll work if they're properly incentivized and supported.
Right.
So think of one of my favorite examples, 7-Eleven, right? Everyone's been in one, everyone out there in TV land. It's owned by a Japanese company. 7-Eleven puts Coca-Cola on the shelf. They have 2 questions. 1, what's our cut?
Mm-hmm.
And 2, what are you going to do to get people to walk in here and buy it? Because we're not selling anything. We don't care if the guy buys Ruffles or a Slim Jim or a pack of cigarettes or a lottery ticket. We'll care depending on the margin,
Mm-hmm.
but we're still not pushing it. So what are you going to do to stimulate demand? And that's how you have to work with a channel partner.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had a piece of software and I did sign up Ernst & Young, which has, I don't know, 613,000 people or something like that, and got it into the partners' bags, I would still have to be bringing them leads to be effective
Mm-hmm.
and solve their problem. Hey, John, I know you need this software. Our partner, Ernst & Young, can help you.
Mm-hmm.
And let's go talk to them about what other things they can do
Mm-hmm.
to streamline your business. Because they've got 1 million things in their bag. Everyone's trying this. Now, there's channel marketing partner guys out there watching this video who completely disagree with me. So the way I would use channel marketing is as a marketing mix. So let's go back to one of my favorite companies in the world, Coca-Cola. There are so many ways to buy Coca-Cola, right? Vending machines, in a restaurant, in a supermarket, drop shipped, wholesale, right? In a bar, in a bowling alley, at a baseball game, right?
It's infinite.
And they all have these channels
Mm-hmm.
that are working. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's true. The Coca-Cola is now in the bar and we're not really stimulating demand in the bar, but we're Coca-Cola.
Mm-hmm.
If I was John's root beer, I'd say that's not going to work. No one's asking for it.
Right.
It might just be have a free root beer, or here's a coaster, or here's a sign, or root beer lady comes and gives out t-shirts, whatever it is, something to get people to drink John's root beer.
Right. Yeah. So when you spoke to our group, what were some of the things that popped up for you? So here are small business owners, and they all had a variety of issues. What did you experience?
Well, the because they're small businesses, there is a seller doer model,
Mm-hmm.
and that's hard because sales is a mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to pick. And if you can't, you can't. I get it. Uh, I find that some of the small businesses are in too many businesses. Everyone's so afraid to lose a sale that they offer things they shouldn't necessarily offer,
Right.
as opposed to a cut like a knife. This is what we sell.
Mm-hmm.
The money you make is in the deals you don't do.
Right.
I think some of the small businesses that you have not decided if they're CEOs or not.
Mm-hmm.
You've got, in one of these groups I was talking to, there was a person there who was a natural salesperson, but he's running the company and he shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm.
Get someone else to run the company, just bring in businesses to the highest use of his time.
Right.
Anytime you have staff, you have problems.
Mm-hmm.
You have people who quit, people who are disgruntled, people who retire, people who go to the bathroom, people who get pregnant, people who slip and fall, right? People who sue you. I'm not saying all people are bad. I am saying that that's a full-time job,
Mm-hmm.
dealing with the people and making sure they're productive
Right.
and helping them get what they need to be productive.
Mm-hmm.
So I see a lot of missing servant leadership, which is an overused term. The marketing, again, the small business, money is not an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a website made for $500.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be too cheap on a website. It's the main piece of collateral you've got.
Right.
But some of the websites I've looked at in some of these groups, there's no learning. It's
Mm-hmm.
just sure.
Mm-hmm.
Not teaching me anything. This is not a tool.
Right.
Right? Is there a calculator on this site that I can figure out what this service is really costing me or really saving me?
Right.
Are there videos where I can actually meet people?
Right.
So quotes, this is quotes for those of you who are on podcast and audio. I'm holding up quotation,
Air quotes. Mm-hmm.
air quote. But can I meet the principals?
Mm-hmm.
They're not answering my questions when I first get to the site. There's no live blog, which is an educational piece.
Mm-hmm.
Teach me. I need to learn something every time I go to your site, or I'll stop going.
Right.
I don't want to read anyone's marketing material.
Mm-hmm.
No one wants to read anyone's marketing material.
Mm-hmm.
I did a marketing comic book and people have critiqued it.
Mm-hmm.
And I've said, okay, that means you read it.
Mm-hmm.
The game's over. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Marketing Guru.
Yeah.
But even that comic book was done in a fun, entertaining way with a lot of little one-liners because we have such short attention span.
I like it.
I don't see why people aren't using these very, very inexpensive tools. I don't see why every business doesn't have its own podcast
Mm-hmm.
where they can teach me an issue.
Right.
Right. Okay. I'm thinking about an IBM computer. What is a computer going to do for me?
Right.
And I have the sales resistance up. You're old enough, John, as I am, to remember the expression deflate the balloon.
Mm-hmm.
Your salespeople walk in with a big balloon on them, and the prospect doesn't want to get close to it, and you have to deflate it slowly so you can get closer. So it's a nice analogy.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a no confrontation way I can learn before I meet with the salesperson?
Right.
Anyone who's ever bought funeral services for someone, this is the worst, most horrifying experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hole in the ground and we're putting the body in, or we're cremating.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some flowers and we might serve some bagels and lox. Otherwise, it's pretty standard stuff,
Yeah.
with the exception of decor. So I'm going to go with the one who helps me through the process the best. Not the one who tries to sell me everything they can and tells me that I want the very best. Of course you want, no, I don't want the very best.
Right.
I did everything I could for mom while she was alive. Putting her in a $50,000 box is no good for anyone.
You just reminded me, Bill, back in the 90s, my wife and I took ballroom dance lessons.
What?
It was really, it was hard for me, but fun. And, this guy really did a terrific job. He used great metaphor. And one of the things that he shared with me is that leading is not pushing and shoving. Leading is opening a door and inviting her through. And I've
Mm-hmm.
always loved that metaphor, and I try to apply it in the work that I do today because no one wants to be pushed or shoved in any part of life. But if you can create a reason to open a door and make it an invitation, I think that works much better.
I like it. It's not pushing and shoving.
Yeah.
No, it's a great analogy. We are on video. You want to do a couple of steps because a curtsy, maybe something for our viewers.
That would be doubtful. Yeah. Yeah. But Gary, he was a wonderful instructor, and he used a lot of metaphor like that.
Mhm.
So, what other thoughts do you have? What other things should we avoid? I think is a good question to ask you.
Okay, can we pause recording for a second?
We can. Okay, we're back from our break. And I had asked you the question about, what are the mistakes that we make most often? Can you think of others that we should avoid?
Well, the big ones again are this sales situation, this marketing situation is about me,
Hmm.
and it's not. Like I said, uh, and let's use examples we know. Amazon,
Hmm.
biggest retailer in the world. You don't see pictures of Jeff Bezos up there. You don't hear about the history of Amazon. You don't hear what their mission is. You just want your batteries.
Right.
Can you get them or not? If you can't get them, that's fine. But if you can, I want them. And I
Hmm.
really don't care that your mission is to deliver batteries in a better way than I could normally. It's not relevant to me.
Hmm.
Not setting yourself up as a problem solver,
Hmm.
right? The other thing that I always see is people focus on a symptom,
Hmm.
not a problem. So the one I hear all the time is my sales force can't sell.
Hmm.
And you're a sales guy, John. Is that because the people are bad? Is that because they have no support?
Hmm.
Is that because the compensation is not directing them where you want them? Are they continually being trained? Are they being rewarded, stimulated, appreciated, and
Hmm.
challenged correctly? Is there a market product fit? Did you
Right.
even think about that? Does anyone want this thing?
Right.
Um, the other thing I see is salespeople are not rewarded for the market intelligence.
Mm.
When I had a company, had a fairly decent sized company, we would have Monday morning meetings, and
Hmm.
everyone had to walk in and say something bad about the company.
Hmm.
And that started a culture where people didn't feel afraid,
Right.
disagree, or express a problem.
Yeah.
One of my buddies is a kind of a world famous CEO. And when someone would come to him with a problem, they'd write it on a chalkboard and they put it on the wall. And he'd say, now it's everybody's problem.
Right.
So how do we deal with it?
Yeah.
The idea that you're coming back with some negativity from the world should not, right? That's not my fault.
Right.
Uh, Theory X is we work with our employees and nurture them. Theory Y is we beat them up. And I've been in too many demoralizing sales meetings where you get beat up over your numbers,
Hmm.
as opposed to the kind of manager you probably are, which is you didn't hit your numbers, Bill. Let's figure out why
Hmm.
and what you need to hit them.
Hmm. And what do we need to do to change and modify this product or organization or service offering?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And, another one, people don't invest in training. And
Hmm.
people say, what if I train him and he leaves? I said, what if you don't train him and he stays? I mean, that
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
You have to develop, Bill Gates came up with the term TCO, total cost of ownership. So if you're going to bring an employee,
Right.
right, there's a cost to that beyond the salary, beyond the benefits.
Hmm.
Sometimes they just want time, right? It's not crazy to do the Monday night beers and or pizza or whatever, so they can get to know each other and minimize the transaction cost.
Hmm.
Uh, CEOs are people,
Right.
and CEOs are people with problems.
Hmm.
Everyone has problems, and the fact that you're successful or a top sales guy or running a big company doesn't mean you don't have any problems.
Right.
And that's okay if we recognize it. if we say, oh, he's the CEO and he's a wonderful human being in a billion-dollar company, yeah, but he could still be a lunatic.
You reminded me of something earlier too, in talking about the importance of providing information or content that is of value creation. But the biggest companies today with the highest market caps, what they have created is a platform.
Right.
So Reddit and
Facebook.
Meta, are examples of those kinds of platforms. They're not creating the
No.
content. We are.
Right.
So
Brilliant business model.
it is a brilliant business model, and
And
that's
and
why they're
fa
valued so highly.
well, and Facebook has broken some laws, some
Mhm.
rules, and done it very successfully. They are everything to everybody. You can find church groups, you can find ophthalmologists, you can find divorced women, you can find dog lovers, you can find people who are trying to fix things. They have created this ecosystem where they literally can be everything to everyone. So a
Right,
guy like you could sit there and say, I am completely uninterested in anything on Facebook except CEO personas.
right.
Find that area, right? Or I actually decided I had an antique toaster and I
Hmm.
had no idea what it was worth. And I found there's an entire world of antique toasters on Facebook where they're buying and selling and swapping. And I took a picture and I put it up there, and the guy said, "Oh, that's worth $1,200." And does it work? Does it make bread? Does it have 40 coils or 30? And it's like, guys, it's a toaster. I was going to throw it out. Someone said it might be worth money, and
Yeah.
so Amazon's another thing. You can buy a screwdriver, a toy, fruit juice, or a house
Hmm.
on Amazon. I have a friend who says dental equipment. He sells dental equipment to dentists, and
Hmm.
Amazon's kind of putting him out of business
Yeah.
because the dentists are going on and buying the bibs and you know, the spray things and the chemicals and everything they need to run a dental practice from Amazon.
Hmm.
But very few everything to everybody companies succeed.
Right,
It just won't happen.
right,
Mercedes is a great brand, but it is not for everyone.
right.
They cost a lot of money to buy and they cost a lot of money to maintain.
Hmm.
They cost a lot of money to insure.
Right.
So it's not for everybody. So that's a big mistake I see people making. I always say, who's your client? They say everybody. Well, my mom? Oh, no, not your mom. Okay.
Yeah.
Mom's got to stick around because I got to use that analogy.
So, Bill, as we bring this to a close, what questions haven't I asked you today? What information do we need that would be helpful?
Well, I think that when I try to think of what you haven't asked me, and you've been pretty thorough, is probably where the role of technology is going.
Yeah.
And that's a very hot and controversial issue, especially with AI.
Right.
Everyone is scared that their jobs are going to disappear.
Hmm.
Well, the internet did not kill industry. It augmented it.
Right.
TV did not kill movies. We spend more on movies than we ever have.
Hmm.
Netflix did not kill. Netflix killed Blockbuster.
Hmm.
It wasn't the tech, though.
Right.
People blame the tech, but Blockbuster died because of poor service
Hmm.
and exorbitant late fees.
Right.
And I remember they tried to get people online on Blockbuster, and
Hmm.
you're standing on the line to get your video, and there's the sales guy pitching the guy in front of you for 10 minutes.
Hmm.
And I don't want to hear a sales pitch.
Right.
Give me my video. Maybe he's making $3 for it,
Right.
right? The Best Buys did not put the little guys out of business just because they were bigger.
Right.
They had a no-nonsense return policy. They had a selection I wanted. They had an online presence I could use. They had the click and brick deal where I could buy it online and pick it up there. So they did what the retailers didn't do. My local hardware store, when I was living in the suburbs,
Hmm.
the guy, they built a Home Depot.
Hmm.
I'm going to be out of business.
Right.
I knew the guy really well. And I said, why don't you differentiate yourself? He goes, well, how am I going to do that? I said, I just bought a disposal here. You know, I don't know what I'm doing. Why don't you say we've got a guy? I'll come over for $20 and put it in.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you deliver all this stuff to my house so I don't have to put 100 pounds of rock salt in my car?
Right.
Why don't you differentiate on that service? And he took the suggestion well, and he did it.
Mm-hmm. Good.
He said, I'm not gonna beat Home Depot's prices or selection,
Right.
but I'll get them there.
Mm-hmm.
Because Home Depot, you're pretty much on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And there are guys walking the aisles and they can point to something, but you can't really talk to a plumber
Right.
as easily. So we can't blame the tech. Instead, we have to embrace it.
Yeah.
So can I take AI and say, yeah, maybe one day it'll write better than Stephen King, but right now it can edit what I'm writing,
Mm-hmm.
proof what I'm writing, check my grammar.
Right.
I use AI every day.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll write an article on why tokenization is coming to real estate, and then I'll hand it to AI and say, now write it like you're a Bronx cab driver.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I wouldn't fire my writers over it. I just know I can use more content.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just did a children's book about two bunnies that go to New York City and get lost and have an adventure. And I used AI to do it. Well, I don't think I'm putting a children's book writer out of business, because I would never write a children's book without the tool.
Right.
Right. Because I have the tool and it can make the drawing, I can make a children's book.
Right.
I'll be making one about you soon, by the way. The focused cloud bunny going into the big city.
Yeah. Well, I love technology. I grew up in technology, but I must say that there are so many choices today. You and I talked about it earlier today, that as I strip the audio from the video to have a podcast along with a video, um, which tool should I use? And you really need expert help in order
Yes.
to make those decisions. And you need help on the execution side, because it's not something I should spend my time doing. But you've got to have the right strategy. And the right strategy comes from talking to your customers and getting that feedback and then making the right business decision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And tech is just a tool.
Mm-hmm.
Right. There are dental drills I'm sure I can buy online, but I'm going to someone who has to use it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
That's
not
right.
getting a Stooges video and a mirror and a drill. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, as I said before, I've so much enjoyed getting to know you, and I'm looking forward to a long-term relationship with you and learning from you. So we did that again today, and I'm very grateful for that.
Well, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
All right. We will talk soon.